Hello, welcome to the Ribeye Club. Today we're doing something really special. We have a whole cow and we're taking you behind the scenes so you can see up close our craftsmanship in how we prepare your favorite cuts of meat. This is the forequarter. It's the front of the animal. We have the front shank portion here, great for slow cooks. The blade we will remove so that we can access the brisket, the forerib, which gives us the famous tomahawk and ribeye steaks, and the chuck, which is excellent for burgers. So let's go ahead and take this apart, see all the cuts. To remove the front shank and the shoulder blade, you have to follow the natural seam separating the muscles with the knife. The front shank must be cooked low and slow for a tender result, and the lean muscle around the blade lends itself to stewing meat and beef mince. This part of the animal supports a lot of weight when the cow is standing or walking in the field, so the muscle fibers are strong with hard connective tissue like tendons and ligaments. This is why cuts from this section are used almost exclusively for slow cooking. This is a beef shoulder blade, some of the strongest, leanest muscle in a cow, great for stewing, slow cooks, and excellent beef meats. Now we continue to the breastplate. This is where we find the brisket, good for smoking and long slow cooks. Brisket is a very well-known cut of beef worldwide. Probably its most famous setting is in Texas barbecue, where it is smoked for a long time with sweet and savory rubs and glazes. It's also used for salt beef, toppings for noodles and pho, and is also a really good ingredient in a burger mix. This is because brisket is located at the front of the animal on the outside of the breastplate, where the animal carries a lot of its fat reserves. As you will see, the meat has alternating layers of fat and meat, just like the belly or bacon on a side of pork, which gives it that soft and juicy texture. Being such a popular piece of meat, you would expect it to be quite expensive. However, brisket remains very economical, and since the whole piece is so big, it makes a great centerpiece for feeding family and friends. That's our brisket. Let's move on to the next one. Now we've removed the blade and the brisket, we're going to move on to the tomahawks and the short ribs. Short ribs can be cut and cooked in various ways. They have all the characteristics of good meat: fat, collagen, and marbling, lying on top of a beautiful flat bone. Sharing many of the same qualities with brisket, but with the added bonus of being on the bone, it's a very satisfying slow cook, or pulled beef. If cut thinly across the ribs, it's tender enough for delicious Korean barbecue. That's our short ribs cut. They're perfect for slow cooking. Let's move on to the tomahawk. So now we're left with the forerib and the chuck. We're gonna separate the two so we can get our steaks and our chuck roll. This is the rib of beef at the center of the rib cage. It's a visually stunning piece of meat reminiscent of the kinds you would see in a cartoon. Probably the most impressive thing you could serve up to guests. The options are endless from this rib section. Bone-in or boneless ribeye steaks, cut thin or thick, can be pan-fried, grilled, and sous vide to perfection. It can even be roasted whole on the bone. Roasted rib of beef or prime rib is very famous in England and the US. As you will see shortly, it can be cut into tomahawk steaks, probably the highest trending and sought-after ways of preparing the rib of beef. Here you can see how the rib cap is removed from the tomahawk rack first. It's a layer of tougher muscle which is much chewier than the eye of the meat and intercostals between the ribs. It's easy to remove. When you look at the cross section, you can see the natural seams between the ribeye and the cap, and with a few flicks of the knife, it peels off satisfyingly in one piece. This cap, with its gorgeous layer of fat, is a perfect ingredient for a sweet and juicy burger. Now emerges the tomahawk rack with only the most tender meat left on the bone. So here is our tomahawk rack. All we have to do is cut them into steaks. Cutting a tomahawk from here is quite simple. You just find the space between the bones, cut with the knife, and then use the saw to get through the bone. Tomahawks are so popular because of their natural thickness and impressive in bone. It's also well known that meat cooked on the bone is often more juicy, as the bone serves as a barrier against moisture loss. If you remove just the round eye of the meat, you get ribeye steak. Ribeye steak is surely the most well-known and popular cuts of meat. We love it because it's super tender and super flavorful. It has the highest marbling of all the tender steaks, making every bite explode with flavor and moisture. It's clear why we are named after it, and once trimmed, this is how it looks. Now we're gonna take off the chuck. The chuck is very famous for its use in burgers. It comes right after the ribeye, so it actually looks really similar, and you can almost eat these first steaks like a steak, just like a ribeye steak. They have great fat conformation, so they're perfect for burgers. Chuck, or chuck roll, is a butcher's best friend because of its versatility and value for money. It's got a beefy, slightly sweet flavor, perfect fat ratio for everyday cooking, as well as significant marbling and collagen for making tasty slow cooks. If you look at the chuck roll, you can see a round eye resembling a ribeye. This is because the chuck lies the next piece along, extending directly from the forerib. As mentioned, it's probably the most useful piece on the whole beef for butcher, customer, and cook, because it's the go-to for braising, stewing, pot roast, and burgers. As we said, the chuck is one of the softest parts of the animal's shoulder. It's beautiful in stews, as minced beef and burgers. The flavor is incredible, and if you cook it for a long time, you can shred it up and put it in tacos. So those were our favorite parts from the forequarter: the brisket, chuck roll, ribeye, tomahawk rack, and the short ribs. Let's move on to the hind quarter. Let me introduce you to the hind quarter of beef. This is the back part of the animal. We get some excellent grilling steaks, like the skirt and bavette. Then we have the whole loin here. This holds the sirloin, fillet, or if you want, you can cut some nice T-bones. We also have the rump and picanha steaks. Now I'm gonna separate the leg from the loin. Here I'm sawing through the pelvis or hip bone in order to separate the leg from the rump and loin. As you can see, the leg is a huge amount of muscle. It contains a variety of cuts, which are mostly lean. Any fat it does have will be around the outside of the large muscles. Similarly to the front shank, the hind shank works hard, supporting the animal's weight. It's full of strong muscle fibers and connective tissue, which is extremely tough if you try to cook it quickly. But if you give it the time it needs, it can be transformed into something even more tender than a ribeye steak. So now we've got our loin of beef, the most valuable part of the cow. We're gonna start by removing the flank steak and skirt steaks. And then we're gonna move on to the sirloins and the fillet steaks and cut some T-bones. There are three lesser known steaks that we can find in this side of the animal: the flank, skirt, and bavette steaks. They are relatively lean and nutrient-rich cuts which lend themselves to marination and barbecue grilling. This first one is the flank steak, the leanest of the three. It's ideal for tacos and fajitas. Once we have peeled off the thin membrane and trimmed some fat and gristle, we are left with a lovely clean steak with a defined grain. The grain in meat refer to the straight lines visible on the flank steak surface, showing the direction of the muscle fibers. Once cooked, you should carve the meat across this grain. This can make the difference in it being chewy or tender. This second one is the skirt steak, the richest in fat out of the three. It's hugely popular in the US and in Mexican cuisine, known in Spanish-speaking countries as entraña or arrachera. It has a robust beefy flavor and a loose grain, which is why it's the perfect piece to put a marinade on. You could pan fry it, but it's way better on the barbecue. The marinade can permeate the muscle fibers, resulting in a steak which really takes in and holds the seasoning you put on it. There are few pairings better than skirt steak and chimichurri. It has great value for money, and its long flat shape makes it easy and enjoyable to grill. So there we have the skirt steak. This is perfect for grilling, and the long grain means it takes a marinade on really well. so you can really get big flavors on the barbecue. Now I'm gonna remove the Bavette steak.
Bavette steak, extremely popular in France, is very similar to skirt steak with the slight difference of being a bit thicker with a tighter grain. It's quite lean once trimmed, but still makes for a tender steak when grilled. Just like the previously shown cuts, it makes a big difference if you slice it thinly across the grain. Slicing against the grain means that the knife cuts against the muscle fiber so your teeth don't have to. You can think of it like using a chisel in woodwork, where it's a lot harder to chisel against the grain of wood compared to how it splits easily between the grains.
So there we have the Bavette steak. This is a favorite for barbecuers, similar to the flank and the skirt. It's a long grain piece of meat, so it goes really well with a marinade. Now we're gonna get down to the good stuff. First, I'm just gonna remove some of this excess meat so we can get to the loin.
Here we just shorten the loin down, removing the excess of meat and bone before processing the prime cuts. Of course, this meat does not go to waste. The layering of fat interspersed with nice meat contributes to a rich beef mince.
Before I separate the rump and the loin, I need to take care and remove a part of the fillet so I don't cut through it. This here is the fillet of beef, the softest part of the animal because it lies inside and it doesn't do much work.
One end of the fillet lies over the joint separating the rump and loin, so I'll carefully peel that section away from the bone without removing the whole thing. This portion of tenderloin is known as the head. It's the largest part of the fillet. Of course, it can be cut into steaks of any thickness, and many people like to roast it whole and carve slices of beautiful pink roast beef. Many of you will know it as chateaubriand in French, and the piece you would use for beef Wellington.
Now I've removed the head of the fillet, I've exposed the hip bone, so I can easily remove it from the joint.
Now we've exposed the bone lying under the fillet head, we can cut through the joint keeping the fillet intact. We could have just removed the whole tenderloin, but we are keeping it in for our T-bones later on. With the smallest knife, if you just cut through the meat in the right spot near the joint, then a little leverage can allow you to break the joint by hand.
This is the rump portion. It's a really big muscle which continues on from the sirloin. We have the heart of rump, and this cap here is the famous picanha. Now I'm going to take this rump off the bone and then remove the picanha steak.
The large rump muscle sits on top of the pelvis, a slightly awkward curved bone. One must follow this curve round closely with a knife to get this joint off in one piece. Rump steak is slightly lesser known and quite underrated as a cut. It's a lot cheaper than more popular pieces, making it terrific value for money. Many consider it one of the most flavor-rich steaks. Despite its leanness, a good quality rump steak from a Black Angus cow produces surprisingly tender results. It can be cut thick or thin, cooked medium rare on the barbecue, pan-fried as a minute steak, and make a great steak sandwich or even a nice stir-fry.
That's the pelvis. Now let's separate the picanha from the heart of the rump.
Picanha is a small muscle distinguishable by its thick fat cap. In English, it's called top sirloin, but it's known worldwide by its Brazilian term, picanha. This small triangular section of the rump is the most tender and fattiest of all. In rodizio restaurants and churrasco cooking, thick picanha steaks are skewered and roasted over charcoal. Roasted whole or reverse seared to medium rare produces a crazy level of juiciness. All this while still costing less per kilo than strip loin, ribeye and fillet.
So we have the heart of rump and the picanha. Let's move on to the loin. So now we have our prized loin. This is the fillet. It's very big over here and it gets gradually smaller. Because we want to cut some T-bones, I'm just going to straighten it off. That's a beautiful fillet steak. At this section where the fillet is biggest, we can start cutting some porterhouses. I'm just going to tidy it up first.
Whilst any steak cut on the bone along the length of the fillet can be called a T-bone, the first few where the fillet part is large are called porterhouse steaks. These are great showpieces at home and at restaurants. A great slab of meat with the tender sirloin or strip loin on one side and the even softer fillet on the other, with the bone preserving some extra juiciness through the middle. Beef steak Florentine style, or bistecca alla Florentine, is a huge part of the food culture of Florence and the Tuscany region in Italy, which has many restaurants dedicated to thick T-bone steaks cooked on the bone until rare. The Chianina breed from Italy, which supplies most Tuscan restaurants with beef, is one of the oldest breeds in the world, formerly used as ox for agriculture and road transport. Now primarily bred for meat, Chianina is known for its lean but tender texture, with a robust flavor perfect for simple cooking methods, which is why you'll see these thick T-bones grilled and seasoned simply with coarse salt.
So that's a beautiful porterhouse with the big fillet and the sirloin. But if you don't want it on the bone, we can remove these as steaks. Strip loin steak. And fillet steak. Depending if you need T-bones or not, you can remove the whole fillet and sirloin and then cut them into steaks.
Fillet of beef or tenderloin has the highest premium across all beef breeds and markets. Apart from a thin layer of silver skin on its surface, it has almost no fat or gristle. Whilst this would normally mean less tender, everyone knows fillet of beef is unbelievably soft.
There's the fillet. Now I'm going to take the strip loin off the bone.
Beef strip or sirloin is the backstrap of the animal, and like the ribeye, it can be taken as a large versatile piece. It's very attractive and neat looking in appearance, as it has a uniform, almost rectangle shape, with a section of clean meat and a neat fat cap on top. It's very close to ribeye in terms of tenderness and can be used a number of ways. A steak from a strip loin, especially a nice thick one with good marbling from USDA or Australian Black Angus, is perfect. But my personal favourite thing to do with strip loin is roast it whole. And oven roasting means you can retain more moisture than grilling or pan frying.
And finally, our last piece, the strip loin, can be made into a beautiful roast beef or cut into steaks. So now we finished cutting the hindquarter. Let's recap on the pieces. We had the rump steak, the sirloin or strip loin, the fillet steak, the skirt steak, the bavette steak, the picanha, and the T-bone. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you soon.